she said, obesity is becoming a very large issue in America today. And specifically, we're looking at the Native American adolescents in our population. One thing I wanted to point out to you in this particular study is that we have tons of data about adults, but we have very, very sparse amounts of information for adolescents. So if we wanted to do a confirmatory analysis on whether or not obesity starts at a younger age, you have very little data to work with. But one thing I do want to point out to you, all of you, is that currently in America, about 16.9%, this figure has changed, it's now 17% of adolescents are now considered obese. Moving on from here, I just want to tell you that our objective for this study was to simply take our data, compare it with national statistics, and like Grace pointed out, that data has been collected predominantly from white Caucasian samples. And so how did we do this? We have several methods we went about in showing what kind of anthropometric indicators we're interested in. When you go to the doctor's office, all they care about is the height and your weight. But there are other ways you can assess a person's medical condition from their anthropometric parts, their body parts. One of them is the calf. What you do is you take a caliper and you measure, just like you see it right here, the skin fold. We did that also for the tricep. And the other one that you might be familiar with if you see it tailored is the waist knee. Now this one in particular is very fascinating. Today we use the waist knee to predict things like higher risk for heart attacks or diabetes. And as you'll see, this particular indicator fails the test when we combine it with white Caucasian data. Now this is just our exploratory data analysis. At a first glance, all I want you to pay attention to is that middle pie chart, particularly where it says obese. From our data, we have currently 38.25% of our population considered to be obese. Now just to remind you, that's not a small number. From the national data, it was 17%. As we get to this particular point in our study, that figure has doubled for our Native Americans. Now this particular study is not adolescent data. I want to remind you, most of the data we do have is on adults. This adult data that you see right here is taken from Sherman Indian women, where that sample population is over 500 ages 21 and above. All I want to show you is that at the 50% mark, greater than 50% of this population was considered obese using the white Caucasian data as a comparison. This is our data. If you wanted to know when exactly do we start seeing that trend of obesity begin, this is a part of that. We have right here a time series plot that starts at the age of 14, continues to 18. What I want to point out to you specifically is this line. At this line, we have a BMI of 25. That means at the age of 14, you can see that Native American adolescents are already being classified as overweight. And as that time frame goes on, you can see as we get to the age of 18, we're approaching what we would call obese. Now this is the crux of our demonstration today. This is known as the anthropometric indicator. All I want you to pay attention to are these bell curves. Now that's what we're looking for. We want a nice bell curve. A bell curve just simply goes up like this. It's like a camel hump. And you want to see one of those. If you get any camel humps in your data, that means it's fairly normal, or highly effective in predicting a certain outcome. And as you can see, probably the most normal bell curve that you can see is for the female population right here. This female population for the calf knee measured in the centimeters is probably a better anthropometric indicator, better than height or weight combined in BMI, say, for predicting the normal weight for Native American females from our study. What I wanted to also point out too is that these two lines right here, these two lines represent the NHANES data. This is the national data I was referring to. At each of these points, all I want you to look at are these two numbers right here and also compare it to the means right here. With the NHANES data where it says 37.3 and focusing on the females, 37.13, look at that, observe it where it says 30.5 and 29.49. Now that might not seem like a big difference, but at this point, if you're comparing thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of white Caucasians to Native American adolescents, you can see that a bigger difference exists between these two numbers in particular. And if that's the case, if there's a bigger difference, that means it's a poorer indicator. If it's closer, it's a better indicator. Now we do the same thing with the triceps knee, and this is the one that's very fascinating. What I think you'll immediately pop at you is the normal bell-shaped curves, right, for both populations. So for the males in particular, looking at the solid line, that normal hump that you see is an excellent indicator when we look at the triceps knee and predicting whether that Native American adolescent male can be classified as obese. This would be an excellent indicator for our study, for future studies. And likewise, for the normal weight females, the triceps knee is excellent. Also, when you look at the differences, and this is the biggest thing of all, when you look at the differences between, say, the females here with the 20.1 and the 23.28, you can see the proximity. It's very close. At that point, you can be sure, or more sure, to say this is a more effective indicator for assessing normal weight for Native American females. Also, we do the same thing for the waist knee, but I want you to notice that bell-shaped curve I pointed out to you completely disappears. You don't see it on either scale here. In particular, you can see that the males are all over the place, and the females have this skewed distribution. And also, when you look at the NHANES data using these two lines as an ad hoc indicator, it's more or less vastly different than those two. So this would be the poorest indicator. Now, why does this all got to do with predicting obesity, and why is it even better than what we had before? And why does it even obscure results that we currently use? I want to show you this particular study. It's a minority study, and the population was 105 African American students. Remember when I said that a waist knee was used to predict things like diabetes or heart attacks or strokes, things along those lines? I want to show you that that waist circumference is significantly associated with cardiovascular activity when analyzed for those African Americans. But when you take that data that Dr. Clark has collected, you compare it with NHANES data, our national data, that difference that he observed completely disappears. So if you wanted to acquire funding or medical grants to suggest that what you found is proven to be significant, you would have a very hard time showing a difference, especially since data is so sparse within minority populations. So here's the take-home message for all of you today. The systematic error in your results, and any results that we have today, can be greatly skewed on the error of creating inaccurate estimations for the relative body fat of not only African Americans, but as you saw from our data with the waist knee circumference, for Native Americans as well. And as we speculate, this is true for all minority populations. So you might be asking yourself, is defining obesity by ethnicity a very poor way of doing things? Can we do it a better way? And you're probably right in thinking that. There is a much better way to do this, but this is on the basis of a new upcoming field called genomics. All we want to do is take your genetic sequence like this and see what genes have been activated and which ones have not. I'll give you an example. You can have two twins born at the same time, same genetic makeup, but using epigenetics, just looking at the genetic code, you can see something very similar but something very different at the same time. One twin can come up with having cancer later on in their lives, and the other one won't. What's the explanation? And that brings me to this picture. Now, there's a great old philosophical debate out there in the world today about whether it's nature versus nurture, right? My genome made me do it. My receptors made me eat it. The point being, it's both. You can easily have your nature affecting where you grew up and what's accessible to you, but you also need to be born with certain genetic factors that cause you to come out a certain way. And there's also a really dumb joke that goes along with all this. I'm sorry if you might have heard it before, but it's always different when people hear it. And it goes like this. I know a teacher who's so cross-eyed that she couldn't see her pupils eye to eye. And it's worse than that. You see, because when she was told about this, she started crying, so she had to go see a doctor. And see, the problem that the doctor found out was that the tears that she cried went down her back, right? So he walked into the room and he just looked at her very solemnly and he said, "Ma'am, I'm afraid you have bacteria." So the point being, Given the large number of obese subjects in our study, we have concluded using our EDA, or exploratory data analysis, that the BMI measure among ethnic backgrounds appears to be significantly different across not only Caucasians, African Americans, but Native Americans as well. Thank you very much.